Put me on a jumbo. Put me on a jumbo. It's for Matt.
Dan, Betsy, and I all thank you for being here. We called this a celebration of life for Matt, but we don't think he would wanted this to be about him. He would want us, as his parents and sister, to make today about all of you, his dearest and nearest family and friends. He would want us to be thanking you for what you gave to him during his lifetime. It's quite a group of people here today. Besides family, we have colleagues from Apple. We have his singer-songwriter friends. We have his electrician, his neighbors, his golfing buddies, people who made his hot chocolate in the morning, and his babysitter since he was 3 months old. We hope you'll meet each other and share how you knew Matt while we have lunch, and then later at his home, where you enjoy desserts from Sweet Henrietta's. And please come to his home, walk in his recording studio, go in his garage and see his projects. And he had just gotten his stunning library wall installed, so enjoy that. As we were beginning to think about what we wanted to say today, we realized that Matt said it all better than we could. So throughout the program, you're going to hear from Matt in his own words. At times there will be pictures for what you're listening to, and other times a black screen, because we want you to listen to what he's saying rather than what you're seeing. Matt loved music. He loved all kinds of music, from opera to musicals, to Christian, to rap, to jazz, country, everything. He was so honored to have friends in the singer-songwriter community here. And we know he's listening today as Ken and Andy and Jared and Suzanne share special songs with you. And they'll mention to you why we chose those songs. We have an old wooden sign that advertised my dad's business. It went on the side of a trailer. And when I asked Matt what we should do with it, he said, well, I want it. I go, what are you going to do with it? And he said, I want to put it up in my garage. And I said, Grandpa was never in your garage. And he said, yes. But when people come over to my garage where I'm always working, they're going to look up at that sign and they're going to ask me about that sign. And I'm going to get to tell them stories that I've heard about my grandpa. And I get to keep the memories alive that way. So in that same vein, we have put one of Matt's Defending Vision hats at your seats at lunch. Please take them home, wear them, and when somebody asks you about your hat, tell them about Matt. Ask him to listen to his podcasts. Help us keep his vision alive. Also at the tables, you'll find clipboards with the various newspaper articles, magazines, even a 4th grade textbook that Matt was in. They're on clipboards, so you can take them off, pass them around, and read the articles easily. And then they're combined with pictures of Matt with some of his friends, and unfortunately I didn't have pictures with everybody, and family pictures. Life is not measured by its length, but by the depth of the connections we create along the way. Whether our time is brief or long, what matters is that we love deeply, we share joy freely, and we leave behind warmth in the hearts we meet. In the end, it's not about how much time we have, but how much of ourselves we give to the moments that truly matter. Matt gave his all to every moment.
Welcome to the Defending Vision podcast, where this blind man shows you exactly how he sees it. That's right, I said it. I may be a successful 31-year-old electrical engineer today, but I have heard you can't do that without vision a million times. What they never understood is I have vision. I do not have eyesight. I'll take that over the reverse any day. To give a brief overview, I was born in Northern California and grew up there through 7th grade. I then spent 8th grade and high school living in Durham, North Carolina. The reason for this move will certainly be discussed in later episodes. I ultimately moved out to California for college at Stanford University and began my career as an electrical engineer in the tech industry, which has now been about 10 years. Today, I live in the Florida Panhandle near family, and I'm loving every minute of it. So, if I were to choose the things that would be included in my biography, I guess it'd be a little bit more like this. From an early age, I began public speaking. Initially, it was presentations about Braille to the local PEO and Rotary chapters, and later, I had the distinct honor of speaking on behalf of great organizations like Blind Babies Foundation in California, Duke Children's Hospital, and the Children's Miracle Network. I got to meet some truly incredible people at the events for these organizations. At 11 years old, with a lot of hard work and thanks to the youth program at a small guide dog school in Quebec, Canada, I became only the second 11-year-old to receive a dog. I am now on my 5th guide walker. Every dog has been unique, an important companion during a phase of life. Junior high, high school, graduation, college, and into the workplace. Speaking of academics, school was definitely a challenge full of highs and lows. I had everything from teachers saying he doesn't need to do math, he'll never use it, to a high school physics teacher who went out of his way to make sure that I was engaged and hands-on with every subject. With the tremendous support and advocacy of my parents, I managed to achieve academically and ultimately graduated from Stanford University. Since then, I have embarked on a 10-year career as an electrical engineer. It's these things that I just described that tend to cause people to say that I am inspirational, amazing, or trailblazing, whatever phrase they choose. I've had friends, family, and strangers that I meet in the airport tell me I need to write a book about my life and experiences. They say it would be motivational or inspirational to others as they go through their own troubles. Perhaps this is true, but I'm not a writer by nature, and I knew that I would need more of a message than just my own story. After all, it's just ordinary every day from my perspective.
For the better part of 4 decades, I've spoken to a lot of juries, a lot of judges, and I don't think I'm going to make it here. It was hard to put into words my reflections of Matt. But as you watch and listen to the program today, as you maybe listen to his podcast, he will tell you more about himself and about what life means to him than I ever could. What I can tell you is that despite the obstacles Matt faced, he lived his life fully. Matt loved power tools. From drills to chainsaws. I used to ask him, since you read with your fingers, wouldn't you want to avoid power tools? But Matt, if he wanted to do it, found a way, and he did it. Matt and I connected a lot with projects. We rebuilt the four-wheeler that we got from some friends. Then Matthew rode it around the orchard and never ran into anything. He loved cutting and splitting firewood. Then he enjoyed carrying it to the cabin in the winter so we could burn it in the fireplace. We remodeled a cabin, and Matthew assembled all the IKEA cabinets. Apparently, that little guy didn't bother him a bit in the pictures. Matt and I installed the soundproofing in his studio, and we were trying to use chains and get them leveled at the right angles, and Matt said, "Dad, why don't we use zip ties?" And they worked perfectly. Last year, Matt and I put together the compound miter saw he bought. And we unfortunately didn't finish putting together the table saw he bought before we had to go to North Carolina. He took his first rifle shots where his grandfather targeted in his own rifle. He became one of the best target shooters I ever witnessed. He made all the parts for his target rifle camera on his 3D printer. He even made a little ledge so that he could put it on his spa, hold your drink level, but not impede the Infinity Edge water. Today we are celebrating the fact that Matt lived each day of his life to the fullest. He made friends easily. He had a smile for everyone. He wore that smile everywhere he went, and he just lived his life without fear. Above all, Matthew loved God. I wish I could live my life a little more like Matthew lived his. Recently, I came across a letter his sister wrote him shortly after Matt started college. And she wrote in it, remembering how Matthew had told her that to her question, an answer to her question, that if he wasn't blind, he would love to run. I'm sorry. He would like to run as fast as he could and not worry about running into something. I believe Matthew is running now, and I thank him for being here.
So, my buddy Matt was telling me about his recording studio at his house, and I had Andy, my wife, and I. This is Andy. We had a friend in town here who had a sudden stroke, a massive stroke, and the doctors told us that was it, and but he wasn't ready, and we wrote him a song, and I was telling Matt about it, and so we wrote a song for our friend Dwight, and he said, well, we can record it over here if you want to. And I said, yeah, I was waiting for you to ask for that, to ask me about it. And he said, by the way, when we get done, do you think you could give me a ride to my golf lesson? And I said, and he goes, could you give me a ride to my golf lesson? Yeah, of course. This is a fun project for Matt and I, and we recorded this for our friend Dwight. Hey there, my good friend, we need you to hang around. There's some memories we ain't made yet before you skip town. So keep hanging on tight to all these hands you had to hold. What's a band without you? You're a big part of the show. So before you climb that stairway and walk those streets of gold, still some songs we need to sing, more stories to be told. Tell the angels we still need you. Tell them you'll be running late. They won't leave without you. Heaven can wait. Thanks, Matt.
Don't worry, we have more strings for the next one.
You know he did that. Gosh, Matt, least you could do is give me the next line. They won't leave without you. Heaven can wait. More days and more chances to kiss the girls and hear the tunes. Hear the hugs around your neck on a precious Sunday afternoon. The chair's still at the table, so really what's the rush? Someday you'll come to Jesus. Until then, just come hang with us. Yeah, before you climb that stairway and walk those streets of gold, still some songs we need to sing, more stories to be told. Tell the angels we still need you. Tell them you'll be running late. They won't leave without you. Heaven can wait. So let's ride out the storm to that sun shines warm on your face again, my good friend. Hey there, my good friend. Need you to hang around. There's some memories ain't been made yet before you skip town. Yeah, before you climb that stairway and walk those streets of gold, how about a few more spins on the potter's wheel and stir some more gumbo? Tell the angels we still need you. Tell them you'll be running late. They won't leave without you. Heaven can wait. No, they won't leave without you. Heaven can wait.
Did not really invite people over, so it was not very social. People did not say hi. And it was probably because the cane was there, they just didn't feel without eye contact that they really needed to say anything. It's amazing where everywhere you go, somebody says hi or comes over and starts talking. So it's basically exact opposite of using the cane. I don't know how I got lucky enough to do it, but I'm really happy I tried and succeeded.
Events like the Radiothon became an annual tradition for my family. We would sit at the dinner table listening to the radio intently. And each year, my sister raised a little bit more. The first year, taking in the few coins she had saved herself. The next, collecting the donations she could at school. And of course, she and her friends gave everything they made from their lemonade stand to Duke Children's Hospital. She and the other change bandits got to dump the money they had raised into the counting machine to see just how much good they had done. In addition, my family was asked to speak at a Duke Children's Classic golf tournament one year, and I was fortunate enough to get to play in several. Finally, I had the distinct honor of speaking at the Teddy Bear Ball. This was one of those cases early in my public speaking when my parents told me there were maybe 40, 50 people. In fact, there were probably 500.
I brought a prop, so that'll come into play soon. there's not much that we could say that Matt isn't already going to say today in this video. So when I started thinking about what I wanted to share, it was something that all of you have probably had the honor of experiencing, his humor. He was typically the first person in the room to make a blind joke. He always had a witty response, and it was his and my goal to make each other laugh at any given chance. So much so, we often drove our parents crazy on any given car ride. Many of you have probably experienced the secret language Matt and I developed over our shared jokes and improvisations over the years, and felt very lost trying to follow along. So today I will be translating or sharing some of those definitions we shared together to continue those laughs we shared. And perhaps some of these might catch on for you, and you can help me keep these wonderful memories alive. So first and foremost, how should you greet your sibling on a phone call or when you're reunited? Yo, doll face! And the more twang on it, the better, we find. If you are feeling overwhelmed or have been given too many tasks, often we would say, I'm not an octopus. And admittedly, Matt himself did not often get overwhelmed, no matter what was put on his plate. But we still use this phrase quite a bit, and it definitely served us well over the years. Our family went on many, many long car rides over the course of our lives. So how do you keep your little sister entertained? You take her favorite stuffed animal, specifically this one, this stuffed cat, and you sing a little tune. And usually it was, I'm a feisty kitty, I'm a feisty kitty. And then it went, it's dead. I'm a feisty kitty, I'm a feisty kitty. So that could lead to hours of entertainment for me. I laughed every single time. Still do, so. Now, of course, we also had a code for letting each other know that if mom and dad were kind of fighting. Now, they couldn't know if we were using this code, so we have to be very specific with it. But now, that code was de fleur, which is of flowers in French. No real connection to that, but we just started saying that, and we're like, oh, okay, I get it. And that was a little secret just between us. If you had an item to drop off or bring your sibling, it's very important to say in a very sing-songy voice, Consuela, I've got a package for you. This came out of one of the many musicals that Matt ran soundboard for in high school. One of his friends made an improv line, and it was a joke every show. And so Matt and I, of course, adopted it. Now, oddly enough, Geico commercials also served a number of funny bits for us over the years. So, for example, if I was driving Matt somewhere, once we get there, I would have to say, Maxwell, you're home. And Matt would obviously respond with, cool, thanks, Mrs. A. Naturally, that was from the one about the pig asking if pigs would really cry wee, wee, wee all the way home. So it really suited us well. Finally, but far from the last of our comedic bits, whenever it was my turn to sighted guide Matt, and I had this honor often, as he grabbed my arm, we'd each say, "Aw, sheet," because it was just the start of our shenanigans on whatever walk or trip we were on. And there are many of these comedy bits, and I'm sure many of you have some of yourselves that you shared with Matt. And I would be honored to hear some of those stories today. Later on, we'll have a moment for sharing for our friends and families, and also just come up to me with any funny story or a little joke, inside joke you might have had with Matt. Matt was my hero, my inspiration, my closest confidant, my doll face, and the best older brother anyone could ask for. He remains a part of me, and I am a part of him to this day and forevermore. I cherish these memories, and I truly hope they brought a laugh out of you today. So thank you for being here to celebrate Matt with us.
So when you guys were in North Carolina, and my wife and I were in British Columbia visiting her parents, and we were keeping in touch about what was going on and how, and I got inspired to write a song for Matt one morning, and so we recorded it on a ukulele on the phone and just sent it to him. He's at it again.
And
It's
I
my
do want
Apple
to.
iPad.
I do want to say that when we sent it to you guys, and you played it for him, he moved, and he was listening and rocking to the music, and it just lit us up, and it was just so special.
I love Matt. He's the only person that ever loved my whistling. I believe better days are coming. I know you'd be glad when they do. A salty breeze and a guitar strumming. I meet you there when the work is through. High seas seem to come in waves. The in-betweens are better form. People love you and Jesus saves. So I guess you've already weathered the storm. And brother, I believe better days are coming. I know you'll be glad when they do. Salty breeze and a guitar strumming. I'll meet you there when the work is through. Everybody. And when it comes to having days of darkness, my friend, I know you've seen it all. If you're looking for a light in the forest, you're the brightest one that I ever saw. And buddy, I believe better days are coming. I know you'd be glad when they do. A salty breeze and a guitar strumming. I meet you there when the work is through. I believe better days are coming, and I know you'd be glad when they do. Salty breeze and a guitar strumming. We'll meet you there when the work is through. We'll have some fun and we will laugh when the work is through. Love it, buddy.
Anything that's a challenge, I want to take on the challenges that are available. So golf is definitely a sport that is not going to be easy at your first time, or, no matter how many times you play, it never gets easy. It would be difficult for me to try to play anything like football or any of that. So it's kind of a almost way to fit in just to say, I play a sport. I tend to walk from the ball to the pin and back and sort of discuss, what's the break, is it left or right, and how much. I had the opportunity at one point to play TPC Stonebrae out in California, and was playing with a couple members there, and we got to one of the greens and we walked it, and I said, all right, I think it's left to right 6 inches or something like that, and one of the one of the members just absolutely starts losing. He's laughing his head off, and I go, what? And he says, it's an optical illusion. Everybody looks at it and it looks the other way, and you got it right. Just feeling it with your feet. Gravity doesn't change, it doesn't lie.
Yeah, and again, you were
So-
and we were, when we were doing this, years ago. We're again sort of ahead of the curve, because a lot of people utilize their vision for reading a putt. That's one of the things that I hear all the time, and I talk to people about when I'm coaching, is reading putts. But now a lot of people are starting to go to really utilizing their feet and standing on the putting line with their feet straddling it to
Interesting.
sort of get a feel for it. You see
Okay.
guys and ladies on tour do that. So they're
Oh,
trying
wow.
to take the visual out of it in some regards.
That's
So again, you're
interesting, sure.
you're a trendsetter there.
I don't know about that.
Remember when we used to go play Finley a lot, do you remember your best 9-hole score out there?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. No, I don't
Well,
know.
I remember that you broke 40 twice.
Okay,
Is a
yeah, all
39
right.
and then a 38. I remember you making a birdie on number 8, the par 3, made a putt from the left
That's
fringe
right.
for birdie,
That's
and
right.
then you parred like the ninth hole to shoot 38. So, and I think if I remember correctly, we were playing right behind the women's golf team, Carolina women's golf team, and they were
Oh,
out
yeah, I
there,
think, okay.
and you were inspiring them with your play and your putt. But yeah, I mean, a very, very, very small percentage of the golfing population can break 80. And we did a lot of 9-hole rounds just for time, and you
Yep,
broke 40
yep.
twice, which is just awesome.
It's not uncommon for people to ask me, why I do what I do. Why do I do archery? Why golf? Why any of the sports or activities I do? And ultimately, it comes down to what else? And just like anybody else, why does somebody join an a cappella group? Why do they do any of that? And for me, archery, golf, music recording, these are the things that make sense and are enjoyable to me. So I do them. If I didn't, I'd be sitting in my room doing nothing much at all. When it comes to deciding to try something new, the key is I can't fail, because typically people, if a blind person has done it, then it's possible. And if I can't do it well, then it's the same challenge that any sighted person has. If no blind person has done it, then I can't fail, because at least I tried, nobody else has. So in some sense, it's actually a lucky situation. It's a game of precision, and that's golf, that's archery, and I guess maybe that's what I like. Anything where, it's an accurate level of accuracy that people aren't sure you can do when you're blind. How do I do archery? How do I do anything? Well, I just do it. From learning how to use a chainsaw to, driving our old Jeep around the cabin, just about anything. It's just give it a try and go. With the perception of a blind person, and in some cases, whether true or not, the stereotypes about what a blind person can do or anything like that, it's very easy to do something that people don't think you can do. When not many trails have been blazed, it's pretty easy to find one, and if you can make the adaptation, then go for it. I can do just about anything. I can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I'm blazing a trail to somebody. I think what things look like to me is more a symbol of what I think matters. What matters to me in White Plaza, or at Memorial Church, or anywhere on campus, becomes an image. It becomes, at White Plaza, it's an image of people enjoying a day. I don't think I can make a distinction between the picture and the sound. To me, the picture is the sound. To me, it's the sound of the fountain. It's not what it looks like. To me, it's the sound of wind in trees, not what the trees look like. I don't care if the tree is blooming. I don't care if it's, turned brown. To me, a tree is the sound I hear through it in some sense. Maybe it's just the way my brain has rewired itself to take the other senses and, create a vision out of that. And that's, if you want to say, my way of seeing it.
My son, courageous, confident, spontaneous, persistent, so optimistic, and so fearless, ingenious, wise, and kind, brilliant, stubborn and strong, so thoughtful, so independent, funny, and forgiving. He never slept. He loved to laugh. He loved his family. And he was humble. During the 12 years after Matt graduated from high school until 2022, we always lived a distance apart, and much of that time on opposite coasts. But thanks in a large part to a colleague who's here today, for the last 2 years, we were able to live across the street from each other. What an amazing blessing that was. My days often began like this. I'd get a text, "You up?" And when he did get an answer, I'd get another text, "Any plans?" And what that meant was, "Are we going anywhere for hot chocolate and coffee this morning?" Because that was early for California work time. So off we usually go with both dogs. For the first year or so, it was always to Beachy Bean, where we sat on the porch and looked over the Dune Lake and the Gulf. And then once Sweet Henrietta's open, that's where you'd usually find us, because we could walk there. What I did know is wherever we went, it would involve sitting outside, lots of laughter, conversation about any topic you can imagine, and almost always meeting and visiting with the strangers that were sitting around us, because that's what Matt did. He connected with people, and he connected people. On those mornings, I was able to soak up his wisdom, his knowledge, the strength to do things like this, that optimism, and his love. Evenings were similar. Late afternoon, I'd get a text. "Any dinner plans? My last meeting ends at 7 or whenever." And then it was a discussion as to whether we were going to go out or eat in. Now, going out was not about what we wanted to eat. It was about what live music was playing where. And if Jared or Ken and Andy were playing somewhere, that was not even a decision. Eating in meant usually a couple of movies, sometimes some Big Bang Theory episodes, which he had memorized, but always him sitting in the swivel rocker with a computer and braille display on his lap, working away on a project. Sometime between 11 and midnight, he'd stand up. Walker would stand up. Walker would walk over to me to get a pet goodnight, and off they'd go towards the door. But he never went through that door without us exchanging "I love yous." So, for the last 2 years, I was able to start and end my days laughing and visiting with my son. How lucky am I? Extraordinarily lucky. And that was my son, extraordinary.
I'll do some talking while I'm getting kind of set up. My name is Jared. This is my mom, Suzanne. My roadie, I pay him very well. This is my dad, Kirk. I got to know Matt over the past few years. I believe the first time we met was over at Crackings. And they were... Matt and his entire family were frequent visitors, and it always just completely made my morning to go enjoy sitting down during my breaks with the family. We're going to be singing, my mom and I are going to be singing a song for y'all today. I'm sure you guys know it. The plan was not for me to play guitar, but Matt is running through the wires right now. and almost set this keyboard on fire. right when I walked up to it a little bit ago, the power cable was smoking out of the piano, and I thought it was kind of cool for a second. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna catch on fire. So I unplugged it, and unfortunately, you're gonna have to hear me play guitar on this song now. So give me a little bit of grace. I was thinking about why this song. And of course, Wendy was telling me that Matt just really enjoyed. Well, I guess I was wondering why he enjoyed it so much, and I've been thinking about that a lot over the past month. Why the prayer? Of course, Matt was an appreciator of all kinds of music, and so it's no surprise that he has a good taste in music. This is a beautiful song, but I started thinking about one of my fondest memories with Matt and his entire family. A few years ago, we actually somehow spent Mother's Day together. I was performing at Old Florida Fish House, and Matt and his family were sitting over at Beachy Bean, and I saw them over there, and my mom and my dad were sitting at a table. And during my break or whenever, I was like, why don't you guys come over? And they're like, we have 3 dogs. You want us to go into the restaurant like area? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we ended up having just a really wonderful Mother's Day. And the reason I bring that up was I was contemplating what about this song was it that Matt really loved, or the video of my mom and I performing it. And I think it's just Matt's like his deep appreciation for his family and for his mom. And that was on Mother's Day. And so I'm going to do my best to get through. I'm a little more the emotional kind. We'll get a little sound check in there real quick. I'm going to try and get through this guitar playing.
I pray you'll be our eyes and watch us where we go, and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace. Give us grace so we'll be saved.
La luce che tu dai,
I pray you'll find our light
cuore resterà,
and hold it in your heart.
ricordaci
When stars go out each night,
se la stella sei
remind us where you are.
nella mia preghiera.
Let this be our prayer
Quanta felice
when shadows fill our day.
lead us to a place,
Guide us with your grace.
give us faith
So we'll be saved.
When we're painted, sorrow will be mended, and every heart that's broken will be mended, and we'll remember we are all God's children, reaching out to touch you, reaching to the sky. Se la felice hai oggi sogno, sento che ci sarà.
Give us faith so we'll
Thank you, guys.
Okay, is that good? Considered to be the founder of the positive psychology field, Helen Keller once wrote, "My friends have made the story of my life. In 1,000 ways, they have turned my limitations into beautiful privileges." My friendship with Matt was a true privilege for the many years and chapters of our lives. From the start, I knew I had never met anyone like him. Matt had a unique ability to live in his moment, unburdened by the past and unburdened by fears and worries about the future. Despite the challenges he carried with him, he had a joy for life that exuded from him like a magnetic field, and a deep faith in our mysterious, brutal, and beautiful universe. I could talk about Matt endlessly, but in an effort to be brief and save time for those of you who want to share thoughts and anecdotes about Matt today, and I know that would mean so much to his family, I do want to share a recent anecdote that to me really is the essence of Matt. In a conversation last year, he said that his landscaper asked him, "What's a blind guy doing spending all this money making a garden?" "Well," Matt said, "I will enjoy the smells and the sounds of my garden, and just as much, I will enjoy knowing that my friends and family are enjoying its visual beauty." Dan, Wendy, and Betsy, we all share in your heartbreak over the loss of our beloved Matt. And I know, I have no doubt, wherever souls hang out, he's smiling today. And let's be honest, he's also rolling his eyes over this huge fuss, but mainly smiling that we're all here sharing love. Matt, I miss you with all my heart. Rest in peace, dear friend.
Kirill, are you here? Your turn. You're supposed to read the program too.
Hi, everyone. You'll have to forgive me. I get pretty emotional at weddings and cereal in the morning with my daughters and stuff. So I might choke up a handful of times, but it's because I'm sick and not at all. I met Matt in 2013. I was looking for some kind of scrappy job to make a little beer money in college, in grad school, and I got assigned to be a scribe for this kid that needed help in some electrical engineering lab classes. And I thought, okay, whatever. I'm not really sure what this means, but I'll go assist. And I remember arriving in one of the very first introductory lab courses for electrical engineering, and there was this dude sitting there with a dog, and we introduced each other, and we started working. So what did we do? It was a class that helped young engineering students actually build stuff, like the thing that charges your phone that you plug into the wall, or with cable smoking. I really liked how someone, you put it, he's in the wires today. So I like that a lot. So to take like 120 volts AC from a wall to put it to 5 volts to your phone that you could charge was something that isn't trivial, and you have to do all these things along the way, including soldering. And I realized very quickly that I could joke with Matt, like, here, touch this and tell me if the soldering iron is hot. And, he'd make light of it, whereas, at first you'd be kind of apprehensive. Maybe he'd be sensitive about such jokes. No, right away it was very easy to to laugh with Matt about anything. One of the stories I recounted as I looked through a bunch of our emails and our texts recently was I'd always fret about not being able to make a 2-week lab session with him, and because we'd have part 1 of the lab 1 week, the next week I'd have some event or some work thing that I'd have to go to, and I would be working with the accessibility office to say, hey, can we get another scribe for Matt? Can we get another assistant for the lab? And then I found one of those in conversations where it turns out we always finished the labs early. So we didn't even need to go to the second week. And every time it was this, and it's not because I was doing anything. I was just occasionally helping him pick out the right color resistor from the little box. He would put them perfectly in adjacent 100 mil holes on a breadboard, if you know what that means. And they would look cosmetically perfect, which I thought was hilarious because even I couldn't make them look very nice. And this guy just perfect, immaculate wires and leads and everything. So we'd finish every lab early. And the rest of the time, we'd have other groups coming to Matt, other partners asking him, how'd you do this step? How'd you do that step? Like, I couldn't figure this out. And my job was, I don't talk. I'm just occasional fingers and eyes for him. And he gets to make all these friends in the lab. And it was beautiful that if I came into that room and got asked who would be the student that needed the most help, I'd point at Matt. But after a couple classes, it was clear that he was helping everyone else because he'd finish everything early. So it was awesome. Electrical engineering, the context under which I met him, is a very visual field. We learn everything by graphs. We have these instruments called oscilloscopes. If you know what they are, they paint waveforms and stuff for you so you can look at them and see like, oh, this signal should have been high when it was low. Let's go debug some chips. How does a blind kid do that? Well, it turns out, he's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just plug a networking cable into here and I'll write a script and I'll extract the data points of the entire waveform and then I'll turn it into sound and then I can hear the waveforms in sound and then I can go through my course at Stanford in EE and, graduate very successfully. So it was great. I learned a whole lot. He and I had a habit of finishing each other's sandwiches. He could stream to me. He had lots of scribes before, but a lot of them were from different fields, like I don't know, philosophy or English majors. When I was an engineer in the engineering program, he could stream to me like, okay, the impedance of this is 1 over root LC, and I would know like that the terms go down at the bottom and he wouldn't have to like be very verbose. So we were super efficient together, and that got to continue on to when I recommended him to some friends in the audience to come intern for us at Apple. He had a 2 or 3 year long internship. He blew us all away. He was the first intern ever to ship actual code in a product. Which no intern was ever allowed to do because, you might have some buzzy smoke coming out. But he was able to. And I think a fun fact is if any of y'all have ever had an iPhone and any of y'all have ever plugged in a cable to charge it, there's a little bit of Matt's fingerprints running somewhere on a little microcontroller in there. And there was a little device we called Van de Graaff because it was shocking. That programmed that little cable in the factory, and Matt Matt touched 1 billion people, 2 billion users every single day that charge their phones. Matt has a little bit of his fingerprints in it, and I think that's pretty cool. And most of that was as an intern. So later on, when he turned full time, he did even more marvelous things. I don't want to bogart this. I'm thank you to the family for inviting me to say stuff about my friend. It's very, very strange to talk about him in past tense. He was kind of a constant that felt always there, but I think the only thing that can help us feel better is, aside from time, is all the wonderful stories you guys are going to share today. So please come up. I've got dozens more, and I want to hear your dozens. And everyone, just thank you for remembering him. He's a cool dude. So thanks, guys.
Okay, so if you have something to share, I've got a microphone. Raise your hand, raise it raise it high, and I'll come to you.
My name is Susan, and I have had the honor and the privilege to know the Cooper family for about 20 years. We moved to the same neighborhood right around the corner from each other in Durham, North Carolina, way back when our kids were still very young, and our children just happened to be in the same age group. And I remember seeing, it must have been right when you bought your house, and I had not very long ago bought my house, and driving by, and you and Dan and Matt and Blue Nose were coming out of the house, and I was so excited because we were looking for boys my son's age, and I went home and I'm like, Philip, there's a kid just around the corner. And so sure enough, all of us as the families became very close friends. And in fact, over the span of about 8 years, we probably had dinner together on average once a week. Domino's knew our order. And my job around that dinner table was to make sure that those 6 kids ate their vegetables and their salad. And Matt was hardcore anti-salad, but I feel responsible for teaching Matt to eat salads. And so fast forward to last November, very shortly after Matt was admitted to Duke Hospital, and I went to spend a couple of hours with them, and it was my first time seeing Matt in probably a couple of years at that point. And Wendy said, "Matt, look who's here." And he looked at me, and Matt's snarkiest voice says, "Oh my God, it's my second mother." And he smiled, and Wendy sort of burst into tears because he hadn't been smiling very much lately, and those were the only words I heard him speak for the rest of his life. And it is definitely a privilege to have known him. So, love you all.
Thank you. All right. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and my husband and I were Matt's godparents. I've known Wendy for close to 40 years. I knew her before she married Dan. Having all boys, when Matt was born, we were thrilled. And when I just reflect back at him, everybody said, "Speak from your heart, Sharon." I'm going to try. His very first surgery was in San Francisco, over 8 hours. He was 3 years old. So I bought him a teddy bear that we called Tough Cookie. He has always been our tough cookie. And to see him go for his first surgery, that bear was bigger than Matt in my eyes. And Jeff Foxworthy, as you saw, is a friend of the Cooper family. Remember that show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? That's when I lost Matt Cooper in my brain. And with you talking about all that stuff, boom! Oh, I have no idea. God did not give me that part of the brain. When the Cooper family moved to North Carolina, we lost track. I knew he graduated from Stanford. I was lucky enough to go to Cupertino, and if none of you have ever seen Apple, it's an entire town. So to see this kid get on his bus, go, and I said, "Wendy, how does he know how to navigate?" And there he'd go with his dog. Amazing, just amazing. So, of course, being in Florida, we were thrilled that we're all here now. And the last few years has been the biggest blessing. When Dan and Wendy were gone, Matt would text me, hey, could I get a ride to the airport? Sure. So I'd come up here and get him, and we'd go there. Who in Southwest Airlines has the ticket counter people arguing who's going to take this kid up there for assistance? And they did. I'm taking Matt. I'm taking Matt. They all knew him. It was fabulous. Everywhere we went, we'd go to the Mexican place where you guys all, I think a lot of you were there last night, and he knew exactly what he wanted, and we'd always follow music. His love of music, and all of you that have been part of his life is, I know he's smiling. Wendy, when you were speaking the second time, how many of you noticed that breeze that came through here? It's Matt. It's Matt. I love you, buddy. One more thing. You were his best friend in life. Roger said, do most brothers and sisters get along like this? I go, oh, no.
I'm Greg Wright. I'm Wendy's cousin. We grew up together, and our dads were brothers. And they had this piece of property that it was called Maple Grove, and a lot of you may have heard of it, but we grew up there. And after obviously I'm a little older than Matt, not too much, but a little bit. But anyway, so as we grew up and went on our lives and moved away, Wendy's parents were so gracious to have family gatherings there. And that's where we would get a chance to reconnect with Matt and Wendy and Dan. And then Dan and Wendy, when Bill and Jean passed away, they kind of did that same thing for the family. And it was our chance to spend some time with Matt. And my brother and I, who's sitting right here, we didn't age very well. We're still like 15, maybe 16. But we would take Matt, and like this gentleman was saying, Matt could take, there's no disability in his eyes. We would take him out at night and chase cousins around, and we're adults and they're young, and we'd say, Matt, you got to guide us because we can't see, it's dark, and he would laugh, and we'd make star jokes and stuff, and we would just sit in that orchard waiting for cousins to come by so we could jump out and scare them and stuff. We're in our 50s, and he would just sit there and laugh and joke with us, and you guys saw the picture of Matt with his rifle. I'm having a hard time with this too. He waited for my brother and I to get there to shoot that. I don't know how many of you got to do that, but it was pretty amazing when he built this thing that would sound that you could, and we're hunters, and we could shoot a rifle. And we did make us, he did blindfold us. But to be able to be a part of that was something I'll never forget as long as my life. So it was, everybody says how amazing he was, but he was. Matt was brilliant. He was an amazing young man. So anyway, thank you.
I'll just stay back here too. Matt has a way of telling us things because for the past week I've had trouble charging my iPhone. And it won't charge, and it's the cable. And now I know. Now I know. So, and I didn't know that until just now, and now I know who to blame. But my name is Jason Russ, and this is my friend Tanika, and we were the ones that had the opportunity to sell Matt his home, and he started as a client and then became my brother. And I just lived not too far from him, and I would come by and check on what he was doing. I have this old Mustang, and I would drive it up into the parking lot and just rev the engine, and then the garage door would slowly come open, and he knew it was me. But this is the quick story I want to tell about Matt. He wanted to know about my family because I have 6 kids, and 5 of them we adopted from West Africa, and he was just wanting to know all about that. And I was able to bring my little daughter, Willa, over to meet him because she's a big dog lover. And I was just, you've got to meet, you have to go there. And I'm just walking around his home blown away, and he's asking about my life. And we're talking, and he's, I'd love to meet your family. And when you're around Matt, there is no disability. I'm like, hey, I'll just send you a picture of the family. And I just stopped for a moment, and he goes, I would love that. And I did. And I was going through my text thread just the other day of our texts back together, and he's like, they're beautiful. And that's Matt. And everybody in 30A should be here today. They should be here. So he's an amazing man.
Good afternoon. My name's Scott. I figured wasn't planning on doing this, but just a friend of the family and a huge fan of Matt, like we all are. I've known him since he was a baby, all the way up. My wife and I were dating. We're probably 18, 19, and we were asked to go watch Betsy and Matt at their house in Fortuna, was it? Way Northern California, way up there. And just prior to that, I'd come home from college and asked my mom, like, hey, where'd the four-wheeler go? And she's like, we sold it. Sold it to who? Sold it to Matt. Like, I said, you sold a broken four-wheeler to a blind kid? Well, little did I know, as Dan mentioned, it was a cool project for them to work on. So when my wife and I got up to Fortuna to watch them, they were little. It had been fixed and it was running, and Matt couldn't wait to show me. So he goes, you ready? Let's go for a ride. I'm like, oh God, here we go. Okay, let's go. So I jumped on the back, we took off. We had an awesome weekend. And at the time, I still remember his core memory, him having to take some medicine through his nose. And we get specific instructions on what to do, and we had to blow the medicine through his nose. And he's a little guy in the shower, and there's certain times we had to do it. And so we both had done it, and he took us both aside after our first dose. He's like, you guys did great, but you need to blow harder. I'm tough. I'm like, and just what a tough dude. Just amazing. And then fast forward, I can talk about him forever, but fast forward, I heard that he loved the movie Forrest Gump, which was at the time a big movie, right? 2.5 hour movie, but I must have watched it 100 times to try to get the voice down the best I could. And then my mom would let me know if he's having a rough day or something. The phone would ring, and he'd say hi. And like, hello, Matt. This is Forrest Gump. And he would talk forever about this movie. And he'd ask me about a million questions. Nothing about what we've all seen, but what did it smell like when you were on your run? When you were in Vietnam, what was the helicopter you rode? Was it a Black Hawk, whatever, or a Stealth, whatever? And I was just like, I'm not a very smart man, Matthew. And then he would just talk and talk and talk forever. So just such an awesome dude. Anyways, like I said, I can go on forever. Matt was a junior groomsman in our wedding. He was the head of the wedding. Again, little guy. When my son was born, it was a no-brainer. So my son's named Logan Matthew. Anytime he's just turned 21, and throughout his life, any challenges going on, we'd have those really typical, hard, normal things for a teenage boy to go through. And oftentimes they would come up like, remember who you're named after. And so he'd seen the videos and knew about him, and just honored to be here. So love you guys.
Come around this way. You go.
I'm John Gillette. The reason that I stood up was Wendy, he brought so many things from our family. We started off, every Christmas, my dad was my sister. And so we would, every Christmas, get together those long distance ways. Well, Matt did us one better on his long distance ways from California to North Carolina. But every person that I know, whether it was Grace, my sister, who was a beautiful music major, or it was Billy, who had just a huge family and had such a sense of humor. She always had things to say. Or Jean, your mom, who hitched her wagon to Bill, who taught me how to redo an old Jeep that we had to take clear across country to Maple Grove and the old place up there. But Matt just had a way of bringing all the good pieces of all the family, and he really was just so appreciated by everybody.
Before I forget, I wanted to add to what Greg said, because Matthew loved it. While they were out there frightening the little kids, they laid down to look at the stars.
Hi, my name's Dina, and I don't think you have the years right, Sharon, because we all worked together, and I don't believe it was 40 years ago. I don't think that's right. Wendy and I were pregnant at the same time. She was so sick. I mean, Matt started out with a bang because, oh, she was so sick. Anyway, we've maintained our friendship. We've spent many, many days at the cabin, and before Matt was on the three-wheeler, he started out with a little Jeep. And I remember seeing Matt and Olivia, my daughter, just cruise around Maple Grove in that little Jeep. He was always the driver. And they drove so much that Dan had to put a different type of battery in the little Jeep to make it keep going. And the story that Matt always told me about Olivia and himself, and this usually came up in context about talking about stubbornness, independence, determination. They were facing each other, arguing which way was left. No, this is left. No, this is left. And neither one of them gave up. They were both right.
I wasn't going to get up, but I'm going to get up because I wanted to say a couple things about my friend. My name is Frank Maynard. I was Matt's coach in North Carolina, golf coach. And, Matt was pretty awesome. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I had a little bit more hair then. But Wendy called me. I was in the golf shop, and I worked at University of North Carolina Findlay Golf Course. So I know Wendy called Duke beforehand, and they must have said no because... there's no way that Matt was a Duke fan, and there's no way they would have called Carolina first. I know that. But she called me, and she called the golf shop, and I had volunteered my time at some Blind Golf Association events, so she got my name, and, she said, hey, I've got a son, and he wants to take up golf, and he wants to learn, and he wants to, I don't ever remember you saying anything about, him being blind, other than the fact that you got my name from that association, and we met a couple days later, and we spent some time together, and we just sort of met in the grill there. And then from there on, it was about, he got out of school at 2:20 from Jordan High School, and we had a coaching session just about every week for 4 years of his high school, 2:45 to 3:30, and then after a couple sessions together, we'd work on full swing and talk about grip and hit some shots. And then I said, hey, Matt, after a little bit of time, usually I go on the golf course with my students. Would you like to do that? And he said, we can do that? We can go on the golf course and play? And I said, of course. So after then, every session was on the golf course. It didn't matter if the golf course was closed and the greens were aerated. We just hit shots out there. But never did we go just hit some balls on the practice facility, chip and putt. We always went on the golf course. And, I said it there in that podcast, but Matt was so special on the golf course, and he was so inspirational to everyone, me included. He made me a better golf professional, father, son, brother. So he was just the best. But, as Betsy and everybody said, there were so many neat, quirky stories about him, but I was in my 20s and I was younger, and we were there after the session. I'd always get him in the grill. He'd always a hot dog and a soda. I'd set him up. I'd go out to my next session, and Wendy would be coming in at some point. But one of the staff members came in, and everyone got to know Matt and his guide dog then, and really just loved him. But one of the staff members who was less ideal as far as a person came up, and I had already gone out to another lesson. And he said, hey, son, what kind of golf club is that? He said, it's my guide stick. I'm blind. And he turned around and walked right away. So Matt just had a way about him. And I'll never forget that story. And Matt told me that story afterward, the fact when we had our next session. So he wasn't shy about that. But, you know, Matt was so awesome. Worked with him for his 4 years in high school, and then went to Stanford. I was able to go out to Stanford a couple times with him and spend some time with him in California, which was amazing. Went to Apple, and he was like the mayor out there. I mean, everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. And then, you know, life sort of went on, and we had some distance, and we didn't really connect. And then he called me out of the blue spring of last year and said, hey, I'm in Florida. I'd like to get back to golf a little bit. Do you know anybody down here? And I said, well, where do you live? Da-da-da-da. And I had moved on from UNC Findlay. I worked at our National PGA of America now, and one of the sections that I support is the Alabama Northwest Florida section, which is right here. And I said, hey, I know people here. Let me connect you. So I was able to connect him. He was able to start some instruction, play a little bit. You know, and then we just had many interactions and conversations. And last November, he came up. Me and him and Dan went on the golf course, and we were able to play 9 holes together. And Dan was about as helpful as he normally is, which is not very much. But, you know, Dan and I were out there, and Matt, and the golf course had been redesigned, and he was eager to see it. And again, I mentioned this on the podcast about he was 10 to 15 years ahead with his reading of greens, with his feet and aim point and stuff like that. He's just amazing. So I'm very fortunate to have that time with him, and I just so appreciate you all. And he was so special. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Burness Pierce, and I'm a teacher of the visually impaired. And over my 46 years in the field, I was also a program director at Blind Babies Foundation, executive director there as well. And when Matt was about 3.5 years old, we got a call at Blind Babies Foundation from Dr. Craig Hoyt, who's a neuropediatric ophthalmologist at UCSF in San Francisco. And he said, there's a family here, and they've just got a diagnosis, and their son's vision is impacted, and we could use some services. Well, as you've heard, Fortuna was up there, you know, through the woods and into the woods and so forth. And so I didn't have staff that could go up. So I said, well, I'll do it. I had left after 20 years of teaching to take this administrative position and was thrilled to be able to work with the child and family again. And so we met in Golden Gate Park, if you know that area in San Francisco, and that began what has been this many years of touch points with the Cooper family. And how lucky have I been to have met them, to have had them step up when our fundraisers were golf tournaments. We had bigger sign up than we had ever had in years before when they learned that Matt was one of our featured golfers. And the donations flowed after the Cooper stood at the podium and talked about Matt's interest in golfing and his extraordinary prowess there. And then the family, and I continued to go up to Fortuna until he connected with his orientation and mobility people and his teachers of the visually impaired up there and so forth. But then he came to Stanford after the family had moved to the East Coast. And so I went down 2 or 3 times, and not as often as I should have, I suppose. But on one of those moments, Matt asked me if I'd ride the tandem bike around Stanford with him. I feared for my life. I was in the front with go faster, can't we go down this particular hill and up the other one? And I was barely walking my basset hound in the neighborhood, and so it was, you know, he couldn't see it, but I was sweating bullets. And then when Matt decided to join the archery club, I think, Wendy, you got in touch with me and asked if I knew of someone who could be a spotter for him. Well, the whole notion of it, that I should have known that this was Matt Cooper, a blind person who wanted to take up archery. And so I offered my son. I said, sure. Liam would love to be a spotter for Matt. And so Liam, who's now 39, was shaking his head like, are you kidding me, Mom? Was it something that I did or said? So I said, no, you will love this opportunity. And so it didn't last very long, but Liam went down periodically to be a spotter for Matt. After the first couple of times, Matt came to the archery class or archery session with a device, just as some of you had spoken about as well, that allowed him to get the arrow in precisely the right spot, which you've probably seen in the video here, and had engineered it so that it worked for his height, the distance to the target, and he became essentially, in our minds, the star of the archery club for sure. And as you saw him pull those arrows out, they were pretty darn close to the center of the target. We met again as he was working at Apple and went out to lunch, and he told me all about the robotics program that he was volunteering with high school students after school. And most recently, he got in touch with me and asked if I would do a podcast on early intervention. And I said, well, I've been out of the field for a bit, and so can I find someone who's currently in the field? And that person wasn't available until the new year. And so that moment came and went without fulfillment, which will be an ache in my heart for a very long time. After many, many years of working with families and their children, I know for certain that these children become adults, and it's because, and Matt with extraordinary competence, and all the adjectives that Wendy used to describe him, that doesn't happen without the family opening the door and allowing that child to walk through it. And in Matt's case, the permission that Dan, that Wendy, and Betsy by his side gave him to explore everything on the other side of that door has been extraordinary to know about and to have witnessed in Matt's extraordinary and beautiful life. So thank you for letting me say a few words. Thank you for connecting with me and continuing that relationship. It is the joy of my life. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who spoke today. I think we need to move on to the next part. Please keep sharing with everyone and with us throughout the day and at Matt's house after this.
If there's any upside to being blind, it's the stories. After roughly 30 years, I have plenty of them.
My question is, if you see a blind person, should I grab their arm and help them cross the street?
Ah, that's a good one. So the first thing is you always ask if they need help.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have had people, I actually had someone at a stoplight. He was on the street waiting. I was going to cross. He actually got out of his car and ran from his lane to the corner to help me cross the street, and then had to run back to his car before the light turned green for him.
Oh.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
My usual question is, how do they think I got to that intersection on my own? Right? They're getting out of their car saying, I'll help you cross. It's like, well, I've crossed like 10 streets to get here.
Right.
How did I do it without you? Now, I've had some really funny stories with people not giving me the food I asked for.
Oh.
In college, we'd go to the cafeteria for food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went in once for breakfast, and I said I would like, some scrambled eggs and, some other things. And I sit down at the table, and the woman helping me goes to grab my drink, and I check my plate, and there are no scrambled eggs, but there's a big pile of tater tots.
Oh.
and and she comes back and she says, "Is there anything else I can get you?" And I said, I asked for scrambled eggs, not tater tots, if you don't mind. She says, "Oh, sure, okay." So she goes and she brings another plate back, a big dinner plate, and it's piled with more tater tots.
Oh.
So I had a lot of tater tots for breakfast that I didn't really want anyway.
Yeah.
So I've had some funny experiences like that, for sure.
Do you watch movies? How does that work?
Okay, so I do, but a lot of people get very nervous to say, "Did you watch a movie?" Or they'll say, "Did you see?" And they'll stop and they'll go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you observe that movie?" And it's like, no, I saw the movie. It's English. Those are the words we use. It doesn't bother me. But I do, and a lot of movies now, some of the older ones it's harder to find, but they're described.
Yeah.
And so as you watch the movie, in between the characters talking, there's a narrator describing what's happening.
Oh.
And so they'll say, a person walks into the room or a car drives down the road, or they'll describe the scenery a little bit.
That's nice.
It's very short because they don't want to talk over dialogue.
Yeah.
So it's very short little descriptions. They can be very funny sometimes with the words they choose. And you'll also have cases where, like, I've watched movies that were, about the South and NASCAR or whatever, and the person describing it has like a British accent. And it doesn't really fit. It just sounds kind of funny.
Yeah.
So sometimes the descriptions make the movie even more hilarious just because they add a little extra to it.
Yeah.
But those can be really fun.
Since you watch movies, what's your favorite movie?
Top Gun.
Nice.
That's
I
a
think
good
that
one.
would be it. Now, when I was younger, if we went to the movie theater or watching a movie at home, my parents would describe it to me because they didn't have descriptions as much then. And one time we were at the movie theater, and I was sitting between my parents, and they were both describing the movie.
Oh.
And I finally had to tell them to stop because they were describing it differently.
Yeah.
Because different people watching the movie, they focus on different things.
Yeah.
And so my dad would notice one thing, my mom would notice something else, and that's what they would describe. It was like, okay, guys, you're watching two different movies. I need one description only, please.
Yeah.
As I see it, everyone on planet Earth has something they will deal with their entire life. It might be blindness, deafness, a physical handicap, a mental illness, addiction, or something else, maybe that doesn't have an official diagnosis or name. Ultimately, we will all struggle with something. One option, of course, is to focus on this obstacle, difficulty, or challenge. But I don't think that gets anyone very far, and it will certainly rob a lot of joy out of life. Personally, I like to look at it a little bit differently. I could focus on my blindness, but that doesn't seem like much fun. Rather, I'd like to focus on my vision. What do I want for my life? What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to meet? Who do I want to surround myself with? Where do I want to go? This leads me to two questions I believe everyone should ask themselves. First, do you have a vision? And if so, what is it? What are you striving for? What do you want? How badly do you want it? Now, if you say, yes, I have a vision, and I know what it is, excellent. There's a second question. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to chase it? Are you going to go after it? Or are you going to ignore it and turn away? Of course, life is constantly throwing things at us that take up our time and attention. So I'm not saying that we can constantly be making massive strides toward our goals. However, every day I believe there's at least one baby step we can take. Every step will encourage the next. I hope students get a couple messages from it. One, everyone has their own unique challenges to overcome. If we work hard, find creative ways of doing things, and make sure that we keep a sense of humor along the way, we can accomplish so many things. Keeping a sense of humor is key. Personally, I think taking life a little less seriously and keeping a good sense of humor is one of the most important things you can do. So, in the article, I give one blind joke, but I feel it's appropriate to give another here. Why don't blind people skydive? Because it scares the dogs.
The first time I met his dog, he introduced me to the dog, but in my head, I always remembered the dog's name as Major. But the dog's name is Walker, but I always thought it was Major for some reason. I guess because I kept calling it Major. Ken thought it was Major too, and then Matt wouldn't ever correct me. I'd see him again, "Hi, Major!" And he just thought it was hilarious. And Wendy would say, "Aren't you going to tell her his name is Walker?" He's like, "Nope, never going to tell her." And so I always knew the dog as Major. So then Ken went over to Matt's house to do some recording. And when Ken came home, he said, "I think Matt has 2 dogs." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, there was a dog there that was completely different because he wasn't working. And I guess when Walker was working, he couldn't pet him. He was so serious, and he just sat there. And when Ken was at the house, he said this dog was just running all over. His tail was wagging, and you could touch him and pet him and play with him. And Matt called him Walker." And I said, "Well, where's Major?" And he goes, "I don't know. I think he has to stay in a crate or something in the garage." But anyhow, we finally figured out there was only one dog. But we would sing this song, and Wendy and Dan asked us to sing this song that we always ended our show with it, or we played.
Yeah, we'd say, "We're playing tonight. Come see us. Bring your family and your multi-personality dog, or anybody else you want to."
All right.
One glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a place on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. Oh, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a place where joy will never end. I'll fly away. Oh, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Oh, I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly
away. We love you, Matt.
And I think Ken has a prayer. Thank you all for having us.
We're honored to share this time with you guys and to honor our friend with you. I had one quick little story, but and I promise that's it. But Matt, I was teaching a songwriting class at the Rep Theater in Seaside recently, and Matt texted me and says, "I'm going to come to the class tonight. Are you still doing it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to Uber over there. I'll see you there." So right before we started, I didn't see him in the audience. And I wanted to wait until he got there to start, so I texted him. I said, "Where are you?" And he goes, "Well, I'm blind, and my Uber driver's Spanish and deaf, so I don't know where we." I said, "All right, stay where you are. We'll find you." And we went to a search party. We found him. But we'll have lunch together if Wendy asked me to say a prayer, if we could bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us to honor our dear friend, brother, and son, Matthew William Cooper. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us with Matt and for sharing him with us here on earth. For the time that you did, our lives are better for it. We thank you for the impact that he has had on us all. Matt inspired us not only by overcoming the obstacles that he did, but by being the graceful person that he was, the friend he was, the brother he was, the son he was. We thank you for that smile and laugh that always lifted us, and we will always carry it with us. Matt took the reins in life. He found joy and spread joy to many. Matt could look you in the eye with his heart and soul. Matt had vision and made the most of his talents and gifts. Ironically, it is in the book of Matthew, with reference to the parable of talents, that is implied that you might ask all of us one day, "What have you done with what I gave you?" It gives us peace and comfort, Lord, to know that Matt probably will have no trouble answering that. I can hear him now laughing and saying to you, "God, well, since you asked." Lord, we thank you for the peace and comfort that you give us until we meet Matt again one day. We thank you for the peace and comfort that we feel that we have an angel and Matt watching over us. We feel that in fellowship with one another, in our memories, stories, even the occasional melody of a nearby wind chime, with or without wind. It gives us peace and comfort to know that Matt is indeed with you, Father, and that not only will we see him again, he will see us. It gives us great peace and comfort as we go on temporarily without him, to believe that he has now felt the arms of Jesus surround him and surely heard you say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done." Please love on him for us. And this is in your name we pray, Father. Amen.
Tell the angels we still need you. Tell them you'll be running late. They won't leave without you. Heaven can wait. No, they won't leave without you. Heaven can wait.